it's a big week for the US this week. You've got the September Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday evening, long trailed. Previously, at one point, the expectations of a rate cut, I think, according to the CME Group's FedWatch tool, was as high as like 98%. Interestingly, in the last week or so, the chances have now dropped to, I think it's 63.5%, which obviously still is quite high, still places like it's on track for a rate cut on Wednesday night. But there is now an element of doubt heading into the meeting that could make the Dow Jones a bit nervy going into Wednesday night and then into Thursday morning. The reason for that doubt is largely due to the US-China trade relations. The tensions between the two countries have cooled significantly in the last few weeks. You've had China revealing a list of exemptions on US products in terms of its new tariffs. You then had the US announced that it was delaying its tariffs at the start of October by 2 weeks. You've also then got the meeting between the two countries in the middle of October. So after that sort of abrupt escalation in August, you have now got the two superpowers coming back to the table, showing signs, reminding the markets that they are still willing to talk. They are still trying to find some kind of solution to this sort of value-sapping problem. And that leaves the Federal Reserve with a bit of a conundrum on their hands. I think similarly, there was also the USA's core inflation reading. The most recent inflation reading last week was at a one-year high for August. So again, there is plenty of reason for the Federal Reserve to sit on their hands on Wednesday night. Which makes it's going to be a really interesting meeting. It's gone from being a meeting where you could sort of predict what was going to happen to one where there's a lot of uncertainty going into it, and that could have a huge bearing on what happens in not only the second half of the week, but arguably the rest of September. Of course, even if they do cut rates as expected on Wednesday night, investors are still going to be incredibly curious to hear what the Federal Reserve has planned for the rest of the year, whether we'll get a third rate cut, whether they'll hold off until 2020, how eager certain members of the FOMC are to continue to cut rates, or whether a second rate cut will be enough. Beyond that, of course, you've got the increasing Middle East tensions in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi Arabia following the drone attack on the oil facility in Saudi Arabia. That again has sort of caused a bit of a headache for the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones is currently caught between 2700 and 27250. I think whether it can break out of those levels will be dependent on the Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday, but also how things go between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Obviously, oil has leapt incredibly high. I think it's at like a 4-month high at the moment. The tensions has also caused people to sort of start eyeing some safe havens, including the dollar. The dollar got a big boost on Monday following the increased tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, which in turn dragged the Dow Jones lower. If that continues throughout the rest of the week, then the Dow Jones could see itself falling below 27,000 as the week goes on. But like I said, the main focus is really on the Federal Reserve, and I think they will set the tone for perhaps even the final quarter of the year, really dependent on what kind of signals they send regarding any further rate cuts in 2019.